Alright, we are back with another Napoleonic War video. This one is Battle of Friedland, 1807. So as we've seen in the previous couple episodes, Napoleon's been doing well. He's been winning battles. Doesn't seem like much is going wrong for him. So let's continue to watch and see what happens in this and learn. And of course, as always, Epic History TV, History March, and I'm assuming their sponsor, Skillshare. Thank you for doing this for us. Links to this channel is in the description, and a pinned comment will have it too. So go support these guys. Just looking through their channel a little bit, they have so much historical documentary style videos that I think it's a super important service that they're doing, in my opinion. Just because a lot of this stuff is not stuff that we necessarily learn in schools, but it's stuff that we should learn, whether in school or on our own, just so we're more aware of what's happening in the world and how we got to where we are now. So we'll continue now.
Supported by our sponsor, Skillshare, home of more than 22,000 online classes. Find out about our exclusive special offer at the end of the video. One week before Christmas 1806, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in the Polish city of Warsaw, then part of Prussia. A year had passed since his great victory over the Austrians and Russians at Austerlitz, and 2 months since he'd hammered the Prussians at Jena.
Yeah, pretty much.
But Russia still had powerful forces in the field, the most important of which was the Russian First Army, commanded by General Bennigsen. Napoleon would not be master of Europe until it was defeated, and Russia and Prussia forced to make peace.
Okay, makes sense.
But that winter, Napoleon's first attempt to trap Bennigsen near Pultusk got bogged down in thick Polish mud. The Russians withdrew to Białystok. The French army, half-starved and frozen, was ordered into winter quarters. While in Warsaw, Napoleon began a famous affair with a young Polish noblewoman, Marie Walewska.
Oh wow, okay.
In the late 18th century, the once mighty Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had been swallowed up by its neighbors, Russia, Austria, and Prussia, in a series of annexations known as partitions. Until in 1795, a third and final partition wiped Poland off the map.
Okay, that's an interesting thing, because from that map, or what they're showing here, it was a huge country. Was it because it was at war with all three, Russia, Prussia, and Austria? Is that why it lost all that territory? That sucks for the Poles. I mean, because that was a massive piece of land that they had, and it just got eaten up in partitions. That's not good.
Now, Polish patriots looked to Napoleon as their savior, praying that his victories against their occupiers would lead to the rebirth of a Polish state.
Fair enough.
Marie Walewska became Napoleon's mistress in order to further this cause.
Okay.
Ordinary French soldiers, however, had little love for Poland. It was impoverished, freezing, and they missed home.
Always the cold.
Desertion rates soared. There were even 100 cases of suicide.
Oh man. Not good.
Marshal Ney, commanding 6th Corps, sent patrols towards Heilsberg, looking for better quarters. What they found were Russian and Prussian soldiers on the move.
Uh-oh.
They'd stumbled into a surprise winter attack by Bennigsen. Napoleon quickly laid a trap for the Russian army, ordering Ney and Bernadotte to retreat and lure Bennigsen west, while he led the rest of the army north to fall on his flank and rear. But the Russians captured a French courier carrying the Emperor's orders to Marshal Bernadotte. Bennigsen, now warned of the trap, ordered a retreat, fighting a series of rearguard skirmishes against the pursuing French.
Okay.
But he refused to give up the city of Königsberg without a fight, and turned to give battle at Eylau.
What a massacre, and without any result. Marshal Ney. That's not a good quote you want to see. So I'm assuming there's going to be a little bit of a hiccup for Napoleon here. But it's interesting to see the perspective of the French troops on Poland, as is, throughout history we've seen people who invade Eastern Europe, Russia. It's a lot of times the weather and the winter, and specifically, really starts to change your mind on whether or not it's a good idea to invade. So, there's a lot to be said about the weather playing a role in picking sides, essentially, in a lot of battles, and this is no different, I suppose.
The Battle of Eylau, fought over 2 days, was one of the most brutal of the Napoleonic Wars, fought in freezing conditions, with neither side backing down. Marshal Augereau's 7th Corps, advancing into the face of a snowstorm, lost its way and was cut to pieces by Russian cannon fire. 5 French Eagles were lost. Napoleon's army was only saved by a devastating massed cavalry charge by 10,000 horsemen.
Holy cow.
Led by the fearless Marshal Murat, and remembered as one of the great cavalry charges in history.
10,000 cavalry. I wouldn't even want to hear what that sounds like with the hooves pounding the ground. 10,000 cavalry. How would you even feed that many horses? I mean, I suppose they eat on the ground, but still, it's like you run out of grass eventually. Especially in areas that, in the winter. Snow-covered fields and stuff, but that's crazy. That's a lot of horses.
At Eylau, for the first time as Emperor, Napoleon failed to win a clear victory on the battlefield. He and the Russians covered up the true scale of their losses.
Oh boy.
But both sides are estimated to have lost 1/3 of their armies in the carnage. After the horrors of Eylau, both armies sought time to rest and recover. Meanwhile, the newly formed French 10th Corps under Marshal Lefebvre besieged Danzig, held by 13,000 Prussians under General Kalkreuth. The city came under heavy French bombardment and infantry assault. After 8 weeks, with no prospect of reinforcement, the Prussian garrison surrendered on the 27th of May.
Wow.
Napoleon's northern sea flank was now secure against any possible Russian landing. The French Emperor now commanded an army 190,000 strong, against just 115,000 Russian and Prussian troops.
Yep, there's that outnumbering.
But it was Bennigsen who moved first, launching a surprise attack against Ney's 6th Corps on the 5th of June.
Interesting.
Ney conducted a brilliant fighting withdrawal and escaped. Bennigsen, having lost the element of surprise, and with Napoleon advancing, retreated once more.
Uh-oh.
4 days later at Heilsberg, the French lost 10,000 men in a botched assault against Russian defenses. But the Russians continued their retreat the next day. Napoleon thought Bennigsen would head north to Königsberg, but instead he retreated northeast, keeping to the east bank of the Eylau River. So when Napoleon's army marched north, it was Marshal Lannes' reserve corps on his right flank that next encountered the Russian army, near the small town of Friedland.
Okay. Ride your horse into the ground if you have to, but tell the Emperor we're fighting the entire Russian army. Marshal Lannes to his aide de camp. Okay, so I guess the Russians did something Napoleon wasn't expecting. He went northeast instead of towards the city. Interesting. So I guess we'll see a big battle here. It says Friedland on the title card, so I'm guessing this is the big, for all the marbles here in this little area of the map.
In the late afternoon of the 13th of June, Russian cavalry scouts informed General Bennigsen that they'd found a single French corps at Friedland. Bennigsen decided he had time to cross the Eylau River and smash this isolated corps before the rest of the French army could arrive to save it. And he ordered his army to begin crossing the river. Marshal Lannes, commanding 16,000 men and facing 46,000 Russians, sent an urgent message to Napoleon that he was under attack from the main Russian army.
I would say so.
Then he fought a skillful delaying action, hiding the weakness of his force behind a large screen of skirmishers, while gradually yielding ground to the enemy. Lannes was still holding off the Russians as darkness fell. That night, Russian engineers built 3 pontoon bridges at Friedland to speed the movement of troops over the river. But Bennigsen was taking a huge risk. If this turned into a major battle, his army would have to fight with its back to the river and the steep banks of the Mill Stream dividing its left wing from its right.
Right, yeah. Terrain.
Bennigsen had also badly underestimated the speed at which Napoleon's Grande Armée would react. The first French reinforcements arrived that night.
Wow. They were booking
The
it.
Emperor himself wasn't far behind.
We won't catch the enemy making a mistake like this twice. Napoleon on arriving at Friedland. Yeah, like he was saying, they're back to the river. Not being a strategist in hindsight is a thing, of course. Staying on the east side of the river is what I would have chose. Using the river as a shield. You can shoot cannon across the river. And if you need to, you can send some cavalry to kind of harass them, but with only one bridge, I guess they built a couple pontoon bridges too, but with only one normal bridge and a couple pontoon bridges along that whole river, there wasn't really areas for them to come and go. It doesn't seem like. So it seems like Napoleon's going to catch them here and maybe devastate the Russians. So.
By dawn on the 14th of June, about 40,000 Russians had crossed to the west bank of the Eylau River. Bennigsen ordered an attack on the village of Heinrichsdorf to turn the French left flank. But French cavalry reinforcements, led by General Grouchy, intercepted the Russians.
Not to pause it again, but just going back to this, what they were talking about, terrain. These guys right here, this is just my opinion, again, don't even need to be here. You can form this line to right here, use the river as a barrier. You have your cannon here to, if these guys swing south, go this way, these guys can cover them, and you can put this force over here, or in reserve. And again, like here's the bridges. Well, was this area not good for a bridge? Because if you're fighting mainly in this area and you need to retreat, this seems quicker than going through town. Again, I don't know.
Russians. In more than an hour of charge and countercharge, the French horsemen finally drove the Russians back. Marshal Mortier's 8th Corps now arrived to reinforce the French centre. In Sortlac Wood, General Oudinot's elite Grenadier Division fought stubbornly against Prince Bagration's left wing, but was outnumbered by the Russians, gradually pushed back.
Fighting in the woods, okay?
Around noon on a sweltering day, Napoleon himself arrived. He was soon followed by 1st Corps, commanded by General Victor, standing in for the wounded Marshal Bernadotte,
I feel like these guys are
as well
destroyed.
as Ney's 6th Corps and the Imperial Guard under Marshal Bessières.
I mean, they're way outnumbered right here.
The date, the 14th of June, held special significance for Napoleon. It was the 7th anniversary of his great victory over the Austrians at Marengo. A good omen, he declared. The battle then entered a lull, as Napoleon assessed the situation, saw Bennigsen's dangerous position, and issued orders for an attack to take advantage of it. Bennigsen, meanwhile, who was tormented by ill health throughout the day, saw that he now faced the full might of Napoleon's army, and issued orders for a retreat.
Well. This is the objective. Advance, looking neither right nor left, bore into this thick mass, cost what it may. Napoleon to Marshal Ney. Yeah, like the narrator was saying. I mean, he was getting out of there because he saw, oh crap, now I got the full French army. I got my back to the river. I mean, my southern flanks is just exposed. I got people out in the woods fighting, and they're outnumbered probably 2-3 to 1. So yeah, he's probably thinking, ugh, I got to get out of here.
But before Bennigsen's retreat could get underway, at 5:30 p.m., 3 salvos from the French guns signaled the start of Napoleon's attack. It was led by Ney's 6th Corps on the right wing, who first cleared Bagration's infantry from Sortlac Wood. But as Ney's troops left the cover of the trees, they came under heavy fire from Russian cannon across the river. As the French attack faltered, Prince Bagration rallied his men and launched a cavalry counterattack. Ney's corps retreated. But now General Victor's 1st Corps came up on his left. Its artillery commander, General Senarmont, advanced with 30 guns and blasted the Russians at point-blank range with case shot.
Oh my gosh.
Hundreds of Russians were mown down within minutes. Under this onslaught, Bagration's men began to waver and then retreat. Around 7 p.m., the Russian Imperial Guard launched a desperate counterattack to try to halt the French advance on Friedland. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. As exploding shells began to start fires in Friedland, the French centre and left wing joined the attack.
Yeah. It's just not good.
With its only escape route under threat, the entire Russian army began a panicked retreat towards the river.
Yep.
But Friedland's houses and bridges were now ablaze. The town became a deadly trap for the Russians. Many were drowned trying to cross the river. Others killed or captured.
Horrible.
North of Friedland, some units were able to escape across a ford, or along the river bank. But there was no disguising the Russians' terrible defeat. The Battle of Friedland was one of the most decisive victories of Napoleon's career.
It's a beautiful picture.
At the cost of 10,000 casualties, he had inflicted twice as many losses on the Russians. About 20,000 men, killed, wounded, or taken prisoner. 40% of Bennigsen's army.
Wow.
The Prussians abandoned Königsberg the next day, which was occupied by Soult's 4th Corps, while Bennigsen's shattered army retreated across the river Niemen into Russia. Tsar Alexander's advisors implored him to make peace with Napoleon. He accepted their advice, and a ceasefire was agreed.
That's interesting. Perhaps I was happiest at Tilsit. I found myself victorious, dictating laws, having emperors and kings pay me court. Napoleon in exile on St. Helena. Yeah, what an interesting battle. I mean, I almost don't even want to call it a battle. It seemed like the Russians were just not prepared. I mean, made a lot of weird choices. Fighting with your back to a river without really any bridges. I mean, I guess they did say it was, you know, you could ford it in some areas, but I think it was still winter, so it's probably cold water. That's not good. Sending your flank so far into the woods, and you know, maybe, I guess, like they said, he wasn't expecting Napoleon to get there, but to me it just seems like the French are way more prepared, they're way quicker, they're way more organized, they have better leadership. I mean, the Russians didn't seem like they had much going, and then I think it said that the guy Bennigsen was sick or ill, so that doesn't help when your overall commander is, you know, feeling ill. Interesting. Yeah, that's I mean, a good win for Napoleon, but it didn't seem like the Russians were able to do much other than fight a little bit and then have a panicked retreat, and everybody kind of drowns or gets captured or killed.
Alexander and Napoleon met for the first time aboard a raft in the middle of the river Niemen, near Tilsit, and developed an immediate rapport.
I guess they're bros now.
Tilsit proved to be one of history's great diplomatic summits, as the two emperors feted each other for days, with banquets, parades, and concerts, then discussed affairs late into the night. A friendship of sorts developed. While
Really?
Russia's former ally, King Frederick William of Prussia, was left out in the cold.
Oh, come on, man.
And it was Prussia who would lose most in the Treaties of Tilsit, signed 2 weeks later. 1/3 of Prussian territory was taken away to create the new Kingdom of Westphalia, to be ruled by Napoleon's 22-year-old brother, Jerome.
Of course.
And the Duchy of Warsaw, to be ruled by the King of Saxony, which Polish patriots hoped would prove a stepping stone on the road to their own state. Polish troops were recruited into the Grande Armée, with Polish lancers even forming part of Napoleon's elite Imperial Guard. Russia only had to give up the Ionian Islands, as Alexander accepted an alliance with Napoleon that left the French Emperor master of Europe. Alexander even agreed to join the Continental System, Napoleon's economic blockade of Great Britain, which banned British ships and goods from all French-controlled ports. The system had been established the previous winter by Napoleon's Berlin Decree. Napoleon hoped that by cutting off British trade with Europe, he'd cause financial chaos and political upheaval in Britain, allowing him to make a favourable peace.
I don't think that's going to work.
There was just one problem. The Continental System didn't work. Not only was it impossible to enforce and undermined by widespread smuggling, the system damaged French trade just as much as British trade.
British has colonies and a navy.
The decisive weapon in this economic war would prove to be the British Royal Navy,
Yep.
which that summer ensured its continued naval dominance by launching a preemptive strike against the neutral Danish fleet at Copenhagen, capturing their warships before they could fall into Napoleon's hands.
Was that something that they really worried about? It looked like Denmark was neutral. I guess I don't know how strong Denmark was during these times. Small country. But yeah, I'm gonna look that up. I'm gonna maybe learn some more about this, like attacking just a neutral country because you're worried about their warships becoming Napoleon's. Even though, you know, Great Britain has, I would assume at this time, the most powerful navy in the world. They could pretty much do whatever they want in the water. So that's interesting. I'm gonna try to learn some more about why Great Britain thought it was needed to attack Denmark. Well, when Denmark was at this time apparently not aligned.
Royal Navy squadrons blockaded all major French ports, seizing any ships trading with France, while ensuring British merchants could continue to trade overseas in relative safety. The Navy even seized the tiny Danish island of Heligoland as a base for smuggling British goods into Europe.
Wow.
But most disastrously for Napoleon, the Continental System would draw him into two conflicts that proved ruinous for his empire. The first would be fought in the Iberian Peninsula, where Napoleon decided to force Britain's ally, Portugal, to join the Continental System. In November 1807, French troops, supported by their Spanish ally, invaded the country. The Portuguese royal family fled to their colony of Brazil as the French occupied Lisbon without a fight.
Wow.
It looked as though Napoleon had won yet another easy victory. But the Peninsular War was just beginning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Thanks to our sponsor, Skillshare, for supporting this video. Skillshare membership offers instant access to more than
All right.
22,000.
Another video down. I'll turn this down a little bit.
And if you're one of
But yeah. Wow, what a video. So yeah, just to kind of summarize it, Friedland didn't look like the Russians were very prepared. Napoleon just came flying in, crashed down on them, and they just fled, and that was it. Wasn't much for them to do. And then it is interesting that Napoleon, I guess, had an alliance with or was good with Russia. It's interesting because like they had just fought so many battles against Russian forces that it kind of was like, okay, now we're just bros. It's like, oh, what was all that fighting for then? You know, it's like we waged war and then now we're just friends. But you know, going back to the British Navy, it looks like they pretty much can do whatever they want in the water. So I mean, that's tough for Napoleon to try to enforce his you know, system that he wants to have everybody follow. So yeah, well, that was a good episode. I learned a lot. I'm excited to you know, keep going on this series. Again, narrator, music is great. Everybody who I'm guessing these are Patreons. People who support Epic History, again, they'll be linked in the description. Go check them out. They have a ton of history stuff, man. Just go check out their channel. I'm excited to keep looking at some of their stuff. I noticed some other series on there that I'm going to check out after the Napoleonic Wars one. So, yeah. Thank you guys. Peace, and have a good one.